Even in the darkness, the thick palls of black smoke are rising from the city, from government buildings that are barely a mile and a half away. The bombing is intensifying now, and the explosions are coming closer to this part of town. There's lots of targets here that the U.S. may be interested in terms of communication centers.
If Saddam Hussein was not expecting this to happen after invading Kuwait, he made an historic miscalculation.
But apparently we have begun some form of attack on key installations in Iraq.
He said to the Iraqi people, perhaps you can convince Saddam Hussein to end this now.
Saddam was warned over and over again to comply with the will of the United Nations. Leave Kuwait or be driven out. Saddam has arrogantly rejected all warnings. Instead, he tried to make this a dispute between Iraq and the United States of America. Well, he failed.
The liberation of Kuwait has begun. In conjunction with the forces of our coalition partners, the United States has moved under the code name Operation Desert Storm.
There are strong indications here at the Pentagon that this war may be beginning right now, and that the President may be going on television later this evening to explain what exactly is going on. We've been hearing these rumors now all day, no confirmation, but in the last hour or so, the activity level here at the Pentagon has clearly increased.
My name is Master Sergeant David Leighton. I've been in the Army for 29 years, but it would have been closer to 35. I had a career of 20 years, retired, and then I went back in. If you include the 3-month train up as the total deployment, let's see, the first one was probably, it was about 8 months, 8.5 months, and 5 months in country, or downrange as they call it, and then the second one was 9 months in country, plus 3-month or 2.5 month train up.
You're reaching deep inside you, things you've never known. It's been tough, rough going, but you haven't gone alone.
We do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day.
Be all that you can be.
Hey, First Sergeant. Good morning.
Find your future in the Army.
Well, around that time I was around 22, and I had a couple of jobs. I was working as a bouncer at a 80s heavy metal club at night, and I was working as a telephone repairman at a company, and I felt like I needed to do something else with my life. It's a good career for anybody. It doesn't have to be Army, it could be anything, but it's a good career for anybody. It definitely got me on the right track. Not that I was on the wrong track, but it got me on a career path on what I wanted to do. And it helped me mature a lot.
Operation Desert Storm began with a squadron of U.S. F-15E fighter bombers which took off from the largest U.S. air base in central Saudi Arabia. That's according to the base's chief maintenance officer. He said the F-15s were heavily loaded with bombs and underwing fuel tanks for the long trip north. They also were armed with cannon and air-to-air missiles for self-defense. The initial attacks came in waves of 7 or 8, and now, 3 hours after the Allies hit, there's word that the Iraqis have struck back.
A locator where we are. We're in the Al Rashid Hotel. It's a 14-story hotel. We're on the 9th floor. They say the windows are bulletproof. We're not sure about that, but it does give a great ringside view of what's been happening here this evening. The skies have been calm here for the past 10 minutes. There were at least 4 waves of bombers came in. They bombed an oil refinery, at least one. They seem to be bombing near the airport. There are other military installations it seems were hit.
As we speak before our eyes, they don't know how successful this mission is, and by the time the president goes on television, as I say, about an hour and 10 minutes from now, he's not going to know whether this was a completely successful strike.
I knew a lot of people, but didn't really understand or know anything about military or service. I only really knew what my grandfather told me about his World War II service, so didn't know that much about it.
I'm Brenda Leighton. I'm David's wife, and we've been married for 30 years. Well, the first time we weren't married, and I was living at home with my parents, so that was probably a little bit different. The second time, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had 2 children, a 3-month-old and a 3-year-old, and it was just, I had to adjust doing everything on my own and not having him there to help, and trying to keep things as normal as I could for the children, as in with holidays and birthdays and things like that. While he was deployed, I pretty much took care of the kids myself. I didn't have much help. Kyle was 3 at the time, and Kayla was 3 months old when he left, and I kind of relied on Kyle to help me out a bit with Kayla. I knew that there was also a possibility that he may not return home, so that was always in the back of my head, but I tried not to think about that and tried to get through it and make things as normal as possible for the kids.
The times in which we live, of course, in which a war can be launched by the United States, and it's done so live on television with continuous coverage.
Whatever happens, you know, just be careful and just know that I love you, and I'm hoping for you to come back.
The war with Iraq began early Tuesday morning as a squadron of U.S. fighter bombers took off from the largest U.S. air base in central Saudi Arabia. They quote an Air Force Colonel Ray Davies as saying, quote, "This is history in the making."
My first initial reaction, of course, was being scared and the fear of not knowing where he was going and for how long he was going for.
In effect at the White House, visitor tours are canceled there, at the State Department, and at the Pentagon. Officials warn of possible terrorist attacks if war breaks out.
My name is Kayla Leighton, and I'm David's daughter. I think he's very dedicated. I think that he is inspirational to me because he's been in the Army for 30 years, and he has gone to Afghanistan and Iraq, and I think that takes a lot of bravery.
Yesterday, after conferring with my senior national security advisors and following extensive consultations with our coalition partners, Saddam Hussein was given one last chance, set forth in very explicit terms to do what he should have done more than 6 months ago: withdraw from Kuwait without condition or further delay, and comply fully with the resolutions passed by the United Nations Security Council. Regrettably, the noon deadline passed without the agreement of the government of Iraq to meet demands of United Nations Security Council Resolution 660, as set forth in the specific terms spelled out by the coalition to withdraw unconditionally from Kuwait. To the contrary, what we have seen is a redoubling of Saddam Hussein's efforts to destroy completely Kuwait and its people. I have therefore directed General Norman Schwarzkopf, in conjunction with coalition forces, to use all forces available, including ground forces, to eject the Iraqi army from Kuwait.
And there's a very big explosion right up to the west of the city there, just winking. Here it comes now, Tom. There's a very big bang right out on the western side of the city. And now guns, there you go. You can hear that, Tom. There are guns, and there's more explosions on the western edge of the city. There's red tracer, white tracer. It's going up all over the place. I haven't seen a missile yet. Another big green flash out towards the airport. And then you see in one direction here, Tom, but let me see if I can get just over towards the edge of the window. Maybe you can hear this. Wow, what a sight. What a sight. Right.
No people on the streets. There were some cars on the streets. My driver wanted to drive with his lights out, running the risk of a rather serious accident. I persuaded him to put his dim lights on from time to time. We passed some other cars, some with dim lights on, some totally dark. There were no people on the streets, and incidentally, there were no signs of military on the streets. I did see some police cars go roaring by, and a couple of taxis madly dashing through the night, but that was about it.
Obviously, the cruise missiles were very, very precise. They left most of the town centre, in fact, in Baghdad, intact. And despite an awful amount of anti-aircraft fire, the missiles landing, it looked spectacular at night, but did by obviously what the Americans must regard as a very effective job. Buildings on the ground the following morning could be seen with the backs blown out. One telecommunications building was left a heap of twisted metal, broken glass, bent satellite dishes on the roofs. But astonishingly, across the road, a bus station, people were carrying on life as normal, and the whole area.
A lot of anxiousness, not knowing what's going to happen. A lot of old movies go through your head, of like World War II movies or Vietnam movies or whatever movies. You know, you're going to jump into the hot zone, and you know, bullets are going to be flying, and you're going to run off the plane shooting, you know, like Rambo. But so all that runs through your head. But you know, it's pretty nerve-wracking right when you get there, and everybody's still in the same boat. But what really happens is you get to a place and you are told where your equipment is, and you're told, you know, how you're supposed to pick it up, and you all go to where your equipment is, and then you go to wherever you're supposed to be in that theater or area of responsibility. But a lot of nervousness, anxious, those type of feelings.
Also, as part of the state of emergency that now exists in Israel, people who are responsible for essential services, essential workers, have been ordered to work as usual. That means police, security, firemen, even people who are responsible for making bread and delivering milk, that sort of thing. Again, also as part of the state of emergency, people have been told to open up their gas mask kits, because this country has been menaced by Iraq, menaced by a possible chemical warfare attack. People have been told to attach the canister filters, but not to put their masks on.
When my dad was deployed, I was 3 months old, so obviously I don't really remember much, but when he came back, I was 1.
The landscape, you know, we had a good idea of what it looked like, right? Because that's why we're training up. We pre-plan, we get images, and you know, so we kind of have a good idea of what it looks like. But it doesn't really come into full realism until you get there. So, but it's not that surprising. But the thing that got me was the smell, and other things like, you know, the dust and the dirt and all that. Both Iraq and Afghanistan, very similar. Obviously one was in the mountains and one was in the desert. The temperature, the heat, the weather, you know, it is kind of it's hot, but it's something that, you know, that you get used to over a couple of weeks. So, you have all these things built up in your brain of what you think it's going to be, and it turns out that it's not like that.
And I know they're anxious, and I can assure them that their military forces out in the field are well trained, they're well led, they're well equipped, and they're going to have the complete backing of Congress. I'm also concerned about civilians, innocent civilians in the Middle East, concerned about the cities in Saudi Arabia and Israel that could be vulnerable to Scud missiles. All of these are concerns, but I have no doubt that our men and women in uniform will do the job and do it well, and that we will prevail.
It was impossible to pick out all the weaponry, but I saw cruise missiles skidding across the skyline to their pre-programmed targets. The Iraqi defenses were spectacular in their intensity. But where was Iraq's iron fist, its air force, and much boasted defense plan? To all intents and purposes, it was non-existent in this crucial phase of the war.
Anticipation, they're antsy. They want something to happen.
When the heavens thunder, when the nation calls, you can make a difference and be a part of it all. If you're able to pay the price, you can. Willing to sacrifice, you can. Adventure, helping service in the Army National Guard, you can.
Find yourself in the Army National Guard, serving 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year, and you'll find an extra paycheck, money for college, and all the adventure you can handle. It's a great way to serve your country and community. Call 1-800-GO-GUARD.
If you're ready to pass the test, you can. An American at your best, you can. Adventure, helping service in the Army National Guard. In the Army National Guard, you can.
First time that he was deployed, when he returned, we did have a big party for him, and the second time we had 2 kids, and we really didn't throw a party, but we just had family over. When he did come home the second time, Kayla was just under 1, and unfortunately she didn't remember Dave. So that was a little bit of getting used to. She had to get used to her dad all over again.
There's a lot of things that people don't know as far as what to expect or what to experience when they join the military. Most people only know what they see in movies and what they hear from other people that don't really know. But overall, it's not that bad. You know, I've been in a very long time, 2 careers if you think about it, because I did 20 years, retired, and then I came back. But I don't regret anything. Obviously, when you get the basic training and that drill sergeant starts to yell and scream in your face, and you're doing push-ups and you're running around and you have no idea what's going on, obviously you're like, oh, did I make a mistake? But that's only a short period of time. And the goal of that is to turn you into a soldier, someone that's going to follow orders and get the job done.
Yesterday, December the 13th, at around 8:30 p.m. Baghdad time, United States military forces captured Saddam Hussein alive. He was found near a farmhouse outside the city of Tikrit in a swift raid conducted without casualties. And now the former dictator of Iraq will face the justice he denied to millions.